Eric Swalwell needs to grow up and admit that he's not a real man. He needs to basically crawl out of the hole that he's dug himself, because nobody who really knows anything about firearms or about self-defense or anything can take this man seriously anymore. He started the weekend with that ridiculous statement that people, if they don't, if they rebel against the government or something because he wants to take their weapons, then, well, the government has nukes. Well, how does it look? Somebody like this, somebody that looks like this, saying that, well, we have the nukes or whatever. Does that inspire? Does that inspire confidence from most of the country? Now, I'll say this: I don't think Eric Swalwell is going anywhere. I think he's going to be in Congress for a long, long time. I think what he's doing with all of this is hyping up his potential to be either a presidential candidate or a vice presidential running mate pick. And, I certainly would never vote for anybody like him. He's just a repulsive person in every respect. And this is hardly the most egregious case. He's just constantly going on camera pretending that he's more important than he is. Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell tried to interact with NRA spokeswoman Dana Lash via Twitter Friday on the issue of assault weapons, but stopped responding after Lash asked one pointed question. The exchange began when Swalwell replied to a Lash tweet about his proposed assault weapons confiscation with, "She's not lying." So Lash had said, high-ranking Democrat Eric Swalwell calls for confiscation of semi-automatic rifles using $15 billion of taxpayer dollars to do it, and proposes criminally prosecuting those who don't participate. So yeah, to me, that is a huge waste of money. And you're also going to get people dying because of it. You're going to get people dying because they're going to resist arrest or they're going to resist confiscation. And you're going to get police dying because sometimes they're not really going to be able to overcome some of these gun owners. I mean, we're just talking realism. Now, I want to clarify something. I don't really support the NRA. I don't think that they're the best advocacy organization for firearms owners. I actually belong to a local, I just joined a local firearms advocacy group, but I'm not even going to tell their name. I'm not into repping groups or organizations or anything. I don't even post any information on that online on the group or anything. But I'll just, for full disclosure, I do belong to a local gun advocacy group. So just to put it out there. But no, I don't think the NRA is necessarily the best group to do it because I think they compromise in some weird ways. Swalwell made news Friday by suggesting that the U.S. government could use nuclear weapons on its citizens if they resisted its gun confiscation efforts. Lash responded to Swalwell's tweet by asking if he would limit the ban and confiscation to semi-automatic rifles or include handguns as well. To which Swalwell responded in the affirmative. He also sought to clarify his position by responding to a reporter's question and CCing Lash. So Benji Sarlin asked, just to clarify, do you plan to expand your proposal to all semi-auto rifles now? When you talked earlier, you kept it to rifles covered by the assault weapons ban, but was unsure from your exchange with Dana Lash. And then Swalwell said, no different. I interpreted her question to mean semi-auto rifles covered under what's considered an assault weapon. And then he CC'd Dana Lash. He said, fair question. Rifles are more powerful and cause more damage when used with a pistol grip. See Scott Pelley 60 Minutes piece. To reduce semi-auto pistol deaths, I'd have universal background checks and mandatory reporting on mental health. At which point Lash asked the burning question that still, at the time of publication, remained unanswered by Swalwell. Can you explain to me the difference between assault weapons and semi-automatic rifles? Is 223 okay, but 3006 not? Why? So they repeat that, and he never replied to that. When the question remained unanswered, the NRA spokeswoman launched into a few likely reasons why her question remained unanswered. This simply reinforces my suspicion that Swalwell uses assault weapon interchangeably with semi-auto rifle. He wants to legislate based on the rifle's appearance and not the actual mechanics or caliber of the rifle. one of a few. He and others know enough to stop short of saying semi-auto rifles, so they use the vague and non-technical assault weapon descriptor as though they only mean to some rifles and not all of them. Two problems with this. First, the majority of gun homicide is due to illegally possessed handguns. This is supported by FBI UCRs, 2016, for example. So those are crime statistics. Second, the argument is inconsistent. Example, you want to ban a 223 556, but not a 308 or 3006. So you can actually see up here a 30-06. This is by the way, this is NATO ammunition. This is the one that I'm most familiar with. But the 3006, that's a pretty big slug over there. It's a little more. It packs a little more punch. Actually, I think the slug is the same size, but the actual the jacket length is longer, so you can pack in more powder and just get a longer range and more power out of it. So yeah, that she brings up an excellent point. Have you actually compared these rifles? See photo for reference. You're arguing for an unknowledgeable ban of things based strictly on cosmetic appearances. The argument also completely excludes a multitude of contributing variables from consideration, like the recidivism rate, the percentage of homicide driven by prohibited possessors, a cultural rot eroding respect for life, etc., etc. Instead, people who claim to care so much for life and solutions, as you will see in the comments, would rather yell horror and terrorist at law-abiding gun owners than exchange in any real good faith discussion on the issue, which is why we get nowhere. In conclusion, Lash called out Swalwell's reference to nukes, which he claimed was sarcasm, and pointed out the other flaws in his argument. So here she goes. She says, lastly, threatening either seriously or even facetiously, progressives tell me nuance and euphemisms are dead and everything is literal in meaning. Voters with nukes, because you, not they, don't understand the argument is both bad lawmaking and advocacy. Lastly, for real this time, the presence of a pistol grip doesn't affect the velocity of a round. She's right. I mean, think about it. Why would a grip doesn't, I mean, it's basic mechanics. Why would a grip on a rifle, which your hand, look at your hand. So you're gripping the rifle here, but the active mechanism is just the trigger finger. So what does the grip affect? The trigger itself is, it's still the same amount of pressure whether you have the grip or not. I have a shotgun, by the way, which it's a 20 gauge shotgun, and that's not affected by the fact that you don't have a grip at all. You just grasp it by the, I guess you would call it the neck of the rifle butt, between the rifle butt and the trigger. So, that's not affected at all by the lack of a pistol grip, and neither is a 12 gauge. I mean, that's the difference. The size of the ammo, okay, the size of the cartridge round. I'm not even sure why anyone would intimate such. All of this, why Swalwell wouldn't answer my question, it's impossible without having to admit the goal is to ban all semi-automatic firearms. Finish. So she's right, and I agree with her entirely on this one. And Swalwell has to shut the fuck up and focus on something, anything that he could actually shed some real contribution with. Because if he continues with this, I'll tell you something, okay? It's not as if I was ever anti-gun. I was always in favor of gun rights to some extent, even when I was much more liberal, which we're talking about a very long time ago. But gradually, with this obsession with guns, with this obsession with confiscation of firearms, and saying, we live in a violent society and the Michael Moore shit, it's driven people like me further and further away from the liberal side, away from actually entertaining you and voting for a Democrat. And now many of us are saying, well, the Democratic Party has completely lost its mind. Gun control is a losing issue, and I'll show you a couple issues with that. Okay, so this is from Gallup poll. It says majority in U.S. now oppose a ban on assault rifles. This is from 2018, and you can see percent against has largely, there was a brief period in 2017 when it dipped. The opposition to the ban, it dipped from a high of 61, probably 2 years earlier. At 61% were against the assault weapons ban under Obama. It dipped to 49, 48, but it's back. And this is in October. According to Gallup, which is by no means a right-wing polling agency, it's back to 57-40. So, okay, so I always say that public policy should not be decided by polls, and I will stand by that. I think it's wrong to base this entirely on polls. And if people want to say, polls are, I hate it when progressives, for example, say, well, the majority of Americans support universal health care. Well, why isn't that reflected in actual elections? Why is it that so many pro-universal health care Democrats end up flopping in races? Some of them end up getting elected. We're not going to say that it's a blanket opposition, but plenty of them end up losing. But you can see here that gun control support is not doing very well. You have pro Second Amendment views are just getting more and more support consistently. Again, they peaked in 2014 here, but among white people, it's at 55% as of 2017. For Hispanic people, it's at 30%. So it's by no means a majority for them. And for blacks, it's at 31% as of 2017. Now it's at 25%. But those are by no means. So, yes, is there a larger group of people who we can switch screens, so control gun ownership. You do see that there have been rises in the black and Hispanic communities, but they by no means. In 2000, probably around the Columbine time, they were very high. They were at 87%, and it's considerably lower now. Considerably lower than it was back during that it's never gotten to the height that it was in the 90s for either black or white or Hispanic Americans. So I think that gun control is a losing issue for Democrats. If you're just talking about electoral chances, okay, if you believe in gun control, I suppose that you have your right to make your case. But I would say that as time has gone on, it's a very, very unpopular issue among most Americans. But yeah, if you split it by race, yeah, absolutely. Whites are more against gun control. The blacks and Hispanics are less, but it's not as compelling as before. In the 90s, there was much larger control for gun control among people of all ethnic groups, of all the racial groups, sorry. You can see here, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had another gaffe. I'm just going to throw this in here because I didn't want to make a separate video. So Ryan Saavedra really is basically on the Ocasio-Cortez beat. I'd be very interested to see an interview between them. It would be pretty hostile. But here we go.
Is that should we, and if we work our butts off to make sure that we take back all three chambers of Congress, all three chambers of government, the presidency, the Senate, and the House in 2020, we can't start working in 2020.
So yeah, this is a bunch of nonsense. Okay, look, here's what she probably tried to mean. The three major levers of power in Washington that are elected are the presidency and the two houses of Congress. Okay, that would have been the most coherent way to put it, in my opinion, and I've had time to think about that. She was talking spur of the moment. Understandable that you can make the mistake, but it kind of is ridiculous because, first of all, if you're talking the three branches of government, which is what most people associate with that type of phrase, you're leaving out the judiciary. and the judiciary is not elected, you would, of course, if you were to elect a Senate that is favorable to what she wants, which would be a progressive Senate, which you're not going to get in 2020. Even if the Democrats were to seize control in 2020, it would probably be corporate Democrats in the lead. Corporate Democrats of the Chuck Schumer / Bob Menendez type, not the Bernie Sanders type. There's the Democrats, by the way. The more think about it this way: the Democrats lost so bad in the Senate, but the real person, if you really want to think about it, who's lost a lot is Bernie Sanders and people like Bernie Sanders, because no Sanders-like Democrat has been elected in the Senate. So he's still all by himself, and the Democrats themselves are even more powerless. So Bernie Sanders' actual effect on public policy is so small now that really Ocasio-Cortez, you can make the argument, has even more influence right now in the government than he does. He's basically losing a lot, and it's not necessarily his fault because he's only one man and he can only run for his own seat. But essentially, if the Democrats were to win back the Senate, I don't think that they could run more Bernie Sanders style Democrats. In fact, if you look at the races where the Democrats were able to hold off Republican gains this year, or win Republican Senate seats, you had Arizona and Nevada. Now in Nevada, I would say you are talking about a pretty far left candidate, Jackie Rosen, but I don't think she's to the degree that Bernie Sanders is. And then Kyrsten Sinema had to basically play Jekyll and Hyde, as if she suddenly moved to the center and she'd understood what serving all Arizonans mean. And I don't think she's sincere. I think she's a liar, but she did win. So yeah, I don't think the Democrats are shaping up very well to win the Senate. So therefore, winning the Senate is already, in my opinion, going to be very difficult for the Democrats in 2020. I think winning the House again will be a big challenge because of people like Ocasio-Cortez. Like I said, a lot of the reason she's catching flack is because she's working to unseat more moderate Democrats across the country in the House. Now, if you look at some of these districts where the Democrats did win, you have people like Connor Lamb. Connor Lamb is a pro-gun, very middle-of-the-road Democrat from Pennsylvania. Yeah, Connor Lamb is not going to embrace anything like what Ocasio-Cortez is proposing, because he'll lose his district, especially when it comes to firearms and the Second Amendment. He will completely be destroyed there if he does that. That's one of the areas where Ocasio-Cortez differs from Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is much more moderate on gun control than most Democrats, because he comes from Vermont. If he was to propose gun control legislation in Vermont, in the federal gun control legislation, that would undermine the rights of Vermont gun owners, I think that there would be a lot of objection to it in his state, although they just elected him, so it doesn't matter. They just reelected him again, even though he's like 1,000,000 years old. So, yeah, I think Ocasio-Cortez, she's going here. She said here, Ocasio-Cortez hits back at Republicans for drooling over footage of her to criticize. Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Sunday slammed Republicans for drooling over footage of her and waiting to criticize her over any missteps. She made the comment in response to an Ohio state lawmaker who criticized her for saying Chamber of Government. Maybe instead of Republicans drooling over every minute of footage of me in slow-mo waiting to chop up word slips that I correct in real time, they actually step up enough to make the argument they want to make. She tweeted that they don't believe people deserve a right to health care. Well, that's not what we're talking about, idiot. So, Niraj Antani, by the way, he's from, I don't remember where, I don't think I'm even familiar with this guy. So, he's under the age of 30. He was elected at age 23, and his response to that was, I was elected at age 23, and I know what the three branches of government are, and that there are two chambers of Congress. Do you even know that? Not sure how you work on any issue without that basic knowledge. And he's right. This is really ignorant on her part. And I think this guy could end up. I mean, let's see where he's from. He's probably from the Cincinnati area. Miamisburg, which is it's towards the southwest of Ohio, Montgomery County. Okay, so the Dayton area. Yeah, this guy is basically, I think that he's picked the perfect place to hop aboard and attack Ocasio-Cortez, because he's going to gain a lot of scrutiny from not scrutiny, but he's going to gain a lot of press attention and possibly become a candidate for some higher office in 2020. I don't know if there's any Republicans that are going to be retiring, but in Ohio it's very difficult to attract a lot of attention, and he actually accomplished this thanks to Ocasio-Cortez. She's actually empowering a young Indian American Republican to kind of challenge the party leadership. Ocasio-Cortez, a progressive and self-defined democratic socialist who stunned the political world with an upset win over incumbent Representative Joe Crowley, Democrat of New York, over the summer, has drawn extensive criticism from GOP pundits and lawmakers. During a live stream earlier in the day, Ocasio-Cortez said Democrats should work our butts off to make sure that we take back all three chambers of government of Congress. Rather, all three chambers of government, the presidency, the Senate, and the House. The branches of government are the executive, judicial, and executive. So, no, the use of the word chambers is, so a chamber of legislature would be consistent with the Senate and the House, but the presidency is not a chamber at all. It's just an office. Okay, so that's just, she probably just made a mistake. She said something very hastily that it was just an improper use of terminology. I say stuff that's kind of stupid like that all the time, using the wrong word for something if I'm just thinking on my feet, but I'm not elected to Congress. The New York Democrat has faced several instances of GOP criticism, followed by aggressive pushback from her supporters since she was elected this month. When journalist Ed Scarry tweeted that an outfit Ocasio-Cortez wore didn't look like one someone who struggles would have, he faced massive pushback on social media. So that's the Washington Post, by the way, getting attacked for, fashion policing. If I walked into Congress wearing a sack, they would laugh and take a picture of my backside. Ocasio-Cortez tweeted in response to Scarry. If I walk in with my best sale rack clothes, they laugh and take a picture of my backside. Multiple Republicans have sought to undermine Ocasio-Cortez's claims to a working-class background. That's true. She is from Westchester County, which is one of the richest counties in New York, and her dad is an architect. She's not the, Jenny from the block that people are making her out to be, or that she's advertising herself as. Ocasio-Cortez in recent weeks also tore into Fox News hosts for gleefully cracking jokes about her finances, saying that the hosts' comments reveal what their thoughts about working class. She's not working class, people, okay? Ocasio-Cortez. Okay, working class, yes. Does she work as a waitress? Yes. Technically, that makes her working class. But working class traditionally, and this is, it's not necessarily 100% consensus, but a working class person is somebody who came up through life, didn't get a successful secondary education. They had to pay their way through school, if anything, and then they had to work their way up through various jobs, especially blue-collar jobs. Waitressing is not really, or bartending is what I think she did. That's not necessarily a blue-collar job. Now, it's not, we shouldn't just shake our heads at it. It's not a white-collar job either. But it's not as if she was, an electrical, like a power company linesman going up and changing high voltage power lines or something. She's not really the blue collar working class person, the type of person that the Bruce Springsteen song type, So yeah, I think that Ocasio-Cortez is basically trying to win her way using both identity politics and class warfare. And ultimately, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how it works out, because a lot of her supporters are going to stick with her no matter what. And a lot of these Republicans are too obsessed with her. I think Ryan Saavedra, it is kind of bizarre, and it is a bit creepy that he keeps focusing on her. But he does have some good articles about other things. So we'll see what happens. Again, Eric Swalwell is a complete idiot. I'd say, if people would Ocasio-Cortez, I think, is a bad pick. But Eric Swalwell has had his time in Congress. So I think people should focus more on him than on her. Anyway, please like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel, share the video. Did I already say that? And please subscribe to my other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds, and comment when it uploads. Contribute to the Patreon if you'd be so kind. And see you guys later. Have a happy Monday.